The first thing you need to know is this. I was on my knees in my own front yard with a German shepherd clamped on my forearm so hard I felt the teeth hit bone. My roses were turning the dirt a muddy red, and my neighbor, a sergeant with a badge he wore like armor, stood there with his arms folded and a smile that said he was enjoying the show. Second thing, I wasn't resisting anything. I was protecting my throat and my face the way you do when a trained animal is trying to tear you open, but he kept yelling, "Stop resisting for the benefit of the curtains twitching on Maple Crest Lane." Third, the calm thought that ran through my head while I tasted blood and dirt was simple and cold. This isn't policing, man, this is pest control. A few hours before that, I had been happy in the kind of quiet I'd worked 2 decades to earn Saturday light through a few skinny clouds, a breeze that smelled like cut grass and paint from the white fence I had touched up the day before. The house sitting there like a promise, I finally kept to myself. 2 stories with a wrap porch that creaked in a friendly way, nothing flashy, just mine. My name is Andre Cole. The paperwork says I'm a federal security consultant, which is a polite cover for something that read more like, "Call me when the wheels come off in a place nobody wants on the news." I did the midnight flights, the no-name motels, the rooms with no windows. I negotiated with men who thought villages were chess pieces. I crawled through places that swallow soft people whole. So when I tell you all I wanted in Briar Ridge was to be boring, to ruin a pair of cargo pants in the garden and argue with myself about soil acidity, you know exactly why. I had gloves off because the dirt felt good and human. I was easing a young rose cane into a little hollow when I heard that voice across the grass. "Hey, you. What do you think you're doing?" And when I looked up, I was looking at Sergeant Rick Halden, the kind of man who smells like cheap aftershave and resentment, off-duty pants with the badge clipped to the belt so nobody could miss it, forearms sunburnt, jaw tight, the K9 on a short leash already vibrating to be let off. I stood, brushed the soil from my knees, and said in the voice you use when you hope someone will meet you halfway, "Afternoon. I'm just planting, I'm Andre, I live here," which landed like a joke he'd been waiting to laugh at because he did short and ugly. And then he said the kind of thing that tells you exactly who a man is. "You live here, that's cute hands where I can see them and step away from the property." The property, like I had climbed into a museum at 3 a.m. I kept my tone easy. I told him the deed was in my name. My wallet was inside 2 minutes and I'd show him. But he shook his head slow, like he was being generous. "People like you don't buy on Maple Crest Lane. People like you case houses there. It was, you hear that enough times and it stops stinging. It just becomes information. You are a category, not a neighbor." The heat started in my neck, the old kind, but I held it back, said Sergeant with respect. "You're making a mistake. Don't escalate this," and that word lit the fuse. You could see it in his eyes, something petty. He'd been feeding for years, snapped to attention. He unclipped the leash and barked a command. "Get him and Max." That was the dog. Launched like a missile. I turned my body sideways, forearm up to shield my throat. Training that lives in your bones comes back before you can think. And when Max hit my arm, the pressure blinded me for a second. I went backward into the roses, thorns in my back, and Halden just watched. Not a move to call the dog off, not a flicker, that I was a person on my lawn, just that smile and his voice loud for the neighborhood. That's what happens when you don't listen. And if you've been in a moment like that, you know how it freezes around you. People at windows, hands over mouths, phones out. Maybe nobody stepping off a porch because the badge is a shield and a story at the same time. The second cruiser rolled up, and before I could say one honest sentence, the younger officer Davis had his hand on his gun and a decision made. Halden fed him a script like he'd practiced it. Suspect trespassed, became aggressive, assaulted K9, and that was that. The official version was alive and kicking. Davis pointed his weapon and yelled, "Let the dog go," hands where I can see them, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't my blood running down my wrist because the dog was still attached. Then a whistle and Max dropped away, and I tried to stand dizzy and light and got "on your knees, hands behind your head" like a hymn. I said I needed a medic. Davis said I had committed a felony against a police K9, that I'd get patched up when I cooperated. Then Halden shoved me down into my own lawn, knee in my back cuffs, cinched tight on purpose. A whisper meant for me alone. "Welcome to Briar Ridge, boy." And yeah, that happened. I remember the taste of dirt and iron and a thought like a line of ice. You just made career-ending contact and you don't even know it. They took me to the substation that smelled like burnt coffee and old anger. The desk sergeant didn't blink. I asked again for medical help and got after processing, which turned out to be a theater performance where the script had already been printed. I sat cuffed to a bench and listened to men write the kind of fiction a jury can swallow if you season it with a badge. Subject reached. Subject resisted imminent threat. Officer feared for his safety. And then Chief Marlowe floated in like a politician on Sunday morning. Silver hair pressed blues, that soft voice men practice in mirrors, because it sounds like empathy to people who don't know better. He looked me over, the way a landlord looks at a hole in drywall, slow thinking about the cost. Mr. Cole. We seemed to have the situation. I told him his sergeant sicked a dog on a homeowner on private property without provocation, that I wanted a lawyer and a medic, and he smiled like I had ordered a unicorn latte. Here's the problem, he said with mint breath and a tone that said he loved this part. My officer reports trespass, resistance, and assault on a K-9 judges. Here do not like that. Prosecutors do not like that. Juries really do not like that. You're looking at multiple felonies. I told him there were witnesses. He chuckled. Witnesses. Sure, people here trust their police. They'll remember what Sergeant Halden saw. Then he let the mask drop because he wanted me to understand the lesson. You're going to sit in a cell. You're going to think, and tomorrow, one of our very good friends on the bench will see you. We'll offer a deal. You plead to something light, you forfeit the house. We all move on. And if you don't... He let it dangle like a fishing line. I said, if I don't, what? And he gave me that empty smile. Things happen in county, people fall. People get into disagreements, paperwork gets lost. Sometimes folks don't make it to arraignment, a pat on the shoulder like I was family. Then an order to process him and no hospital yet. They thought that's where I'd break the truth, that's where I woke up. I sat in that cell with the metal bench and the flicker light and the smell of piss and the dried blood making my sleeves stiff, and I did the only thing that has ever saved me. I took inventory cameras here and here, guard steps in cycles like this. The buzz that means a door 6 rooms down opens the shape of time as it bounces off cinder block. And I made a decision that didn't require adrenaline. I'm not dying in here so a bully can frame me and steal my house and brag about it over beers. A couple hours later, Davis came to the bars without looking me in the eye and said I had one phone call, local numbers only. He walked me to a grimy phone bolted to the wall. Halden leaned against a desk with a grin that made me think of a kid who set a trap for a dog and can't wait to see the paw snap. I dialed a number that doesn't live on any phone bill. It rings in one room in one building that officially doesn't exist outside Arlington. And when the click came, I didn't say help. I didn't say they hurt me. I said, this is Nomad weather in Fairview turned hostile, declaring black frost on grid 7. Immediate sanitation authorized, confirm. Then I hung up. Davis blinked. Halden smirked, and I went back to my cell to listen for the clock I knew was now ticking. In plain English, because you deserve that, Nomad is me. Black frost means a command-level asset is under extrajudicial threat on domestic ground grid. 7 is the Briar Ridge command circle. Sanitation means I'm not asking for a lawyer or an investigation. I'm activating a unit. The unit is called Widow Fox, and they are not the FBI. They are not internal affairs. They are not a PR nightmare with a podium and a seal. They are the people you call when the entire table is rigged and you need the table removed from the room, fast, quiet, permanent. And I run them. 28 miles outside Fairview County, inside a semi that looks like it hauls lettuce. Captain Nadia Reyes woke up her team. Reyes is 5'0" and built like a metronome, everything steady, everything on time. We just got black frost on coal, she said, and the truck bloomed alive, screens, maps, encrypted lines. Pixel, our systems brain, slid into her chair with a coffee and fell through the sheriff's department firewalls like they were wet cardboard. She pulled emails, buried complaints, body cam dumps, bank trails, a judge's tea times, a developer's shell companies, while Reaper and Slate, field guys, drove a forgettable rental into town and placed tiny mics and pinhole cameras in the break room. The chief's office and Halden's kitchen window frame thermal eyes watched my block to make sure no one came for my house while I was in the cage. Within 3 hours, Widow Fox understood Fairview County better than the people who worked there. Pixel told Reyes what she already suspected. Rot top to bottom, Chief Marlowe is running a forfeiture and kickback racket. Halden is his favorite hammer. The K-9 is a tool for intimidation charges. Get dropped after a weekend in a cage so the message lands without the paperwork. Judges and DA golf together. Then the part that made Reyes's jaw set. They're on tape in the break room planning an accident for Cole tonight. Reyes didn't ask permission. She called a bondsman who works for us without knowing it. The man walked into the station with the amount they set because they never thought anybody would meet it. The desk sergeant cursed but processed me out. Halden tried to throw a little smirk about a rich friend I didn't answer. I just let him see there was nothing in my eyes he could push around anymore. Outside black sedan, Slate at the wheel, Reaper riding shotgun status. Slate asked, Arm is bad but attached, I said. Chief wants me dead in county. They think they own the judge. They think they're taking the house. Copy, Slate said. Widow Fox is spun up. You're going to a safe house. The safe house lived over a nail salon off Highway 6. Doc irrigated punctures and stitched while I clenched my teeth and watched Reyes on a secure feed walk me through options. We had them on tape, we had their books, we could have packaged it for justice and let the wheels turn for years. But I told her no, not this time. I wanted decisive. I wanted a mirror held up so close they could see every crack. Halden won't be able to resist coming to my house to remind me who owns this town, I said, so we let him. Reyes tilted her head, then smiled. Slow. Copy, will set the table. That evening, the street looked like a brochure again as sunlight slid gold down the perfect fences. We swept my place to be sure Halden hadn't planted anything. He hadn't. Bullies think fear is enough. Then wired my entry kitchen and living room with microcams. Reaper took the upstairs banister. Slate the tree line out back, 2 more tucked into the dining room and hallway, full kit, quiet, disciplined. I walked in with a sling to sell the story, left the front door unlocked, sat in my own living room with 1 lamp and the curtains cracked just enough to say a wounded man was home alone. I didn't wait long. Halden's black Polo came up the driveway like it paid taxes. No knock knob, turned door closed with that soft click. Predators love. Leaving your door open isn't smart in this neighborhood. Cole, he called. Never know what trouble wanders in. He looked around and you could see the envy move like a shadow. Nice place. Shame you won't get to keep it. Here's what's going to happen. You sign a few papers, you take a plea. Maybe I talk to the DA about playing nice, or we do it the other way and county teaches you the rules. I stood up and the sling was gone and the temperature in the room changed. Sergeant Halden, I said, you made 3 mistakes today. He smirked. Oh yeah. And then the red dot stitched onto his chest and throat from 6 angles, then 8. Widow Fox slid out of the walls like the house grew them, rifles steady, eyes calm. You ever watch a man realize he is not the apex anything? His breath stuttered and his hands came up and his eyes flicked like trapped birds. What is this? Who are you people? He stammered. I stepped close and he could see what he should have seen on my lawn. First mistake, you thought I was alone. Second, you thought this town was yours. I flipped open the black credential case and let the seal and the photo and the authority sit in his vision until he understood. There was no door to run through. You didn't shake down a renter tonight. You kicked the front door of a federal covert asset and drew blood on recorded private property while on duty. Then you sat in a break room boasting with your chief about forcing a plea and taking his house and making sure he didn't survive county. All of that is recorded. His mouth opened and closed with nothing behind it. This is illegal. You can't do this. I'm a police officer, he said, small now. And I said, no, you're a criminal with a badge. There's a difference. And then Reyes stepped from my kitchen with a tablet showing Chief Marlowe in his chair, hooded zip, tied a quiet operator behind him checking a watch. Third mistake, you thought you were protected, I said. As of 15 minutes ago, your chief, your desk sergeant, and your buddy Davis are in federal custody. Their phones are bagged. Their drives are mirrored. Everything you bragged about is indexed and headed to a task force that will eat it like breakfast. There will be Suburbans out front before your alarm would have gone off. His knees. Quit, it happens that fast. The man who called me boy on my grass folded on my floor with his hands shaking. Please, he whispered. Please, man. And I said, you walked into my home to threaten me. You bled on my roses and called it the law. Now you live with the math. Widow Fox secured him quiet. No drama, no extra pain. Clinical the way you treat infestation, not negotiation. And while he sat there whimpering, his kingdom went dark. Marlowe out the back door, Davis intercepted on his route home. The desk sergeant scooped with a shrug and a stare. Phones bagged evidence, copied cars left where they were. Just empty seats and unanswered radios. Morning came and Briar Ridge woke to a silence that sounded like confusion, unmarked SUVs and federal patches outside the substation, men and women with clipboards and a look that says, we've already seen what we came for. The news said sweeping anti-corruption action, justice said. Civil rights and racketeering people on Willow Street called it overdue. And in the afternoon they packed the community center and told stories to each other that people had been swallowing for years. Sons roughed up for attitude donations required for permits, cars taken for evidence that never made it back, a dozen little thefts that add up to one big truth. And yes, there were tears, not just for what happened, but for what could finally stop. I watched that stream from my living room because men like me don't take a bow. My arm was wrapped and aching, and the roses outside wore a brown memory I knew would fade. I had done the thing I came to do, and the house that was supposed to be my sanctuary felt like a battlefield with fresh smoke. So I packed a small bag, locked the door, and let the latch click like a final period on a sentence I didn't want to write. Now here's where I leave you with something that will sit in your chest for a while because it sits in mine. Was what I did justice or revenge? When a system is that dirty, that brazen, so convinced it's untouchable that it laughs about accidents in county, does playing by the rules work? Or do you have to break the game to stop it? You tell me if Widow Fox went too far or not nearly far enough. You tell me where the line is between order and intimidation when the badge gets used like a club. And if you've seen anything like this where you live, where you work, where your kids go to school, put it in the comments, put the city, put the details you're comfortable sharing, push back. If you think I'm wrong, agree. If you think I'm right, and if you want more stories told plain and honest, hit subscribe, because this wasn't just one bad man and one bad chief in one neat little county. This is a pattern, and patterns only break when somebody finally says, "Not today."